The armored Mercedes was his sanctuary, but the 7-year-old girl in the faded pink coat shattered that illusion, tugging on the ruthless syndicate boss's tailored sleeve. She whispered the 5 words that would rewrite his criminal empire. "There's something under your car." What he discovered changed absolutely everything. The biting November wind sweeping off Boston Harbor felt like shattered glass against Lucian Blackwood's jaw, but the cold was nothing compared to the ice in his veins. As the undisputed head of the Blackwood Syndicate, a sprawling enterprise that controlled the eastern seaboard's shipping, logistics, and underground casinos, Lucian was a man accustomed to control. He had just finished a tense, 2-hour negotiation at a private dining room inside the Oak Room. The rival factions had capitulated. They always did. Flanked by his top enforcers, Jared and Colin, Lucian stepped out onto the damp cobblestone pavement of the alley where his motorcade waited. The engine of his customized, bulletproof Mercedes G-Wagon purred a low, menacing hum. It was 11:45 p.m. The street was seemingly deserted, secured by his perimeter men. Or, so he thought. Just as Lucian reached for the heavy iron handle of the passenger door, a tiny hand wrapped around the cuff of his bespoke charcoal suit. Jared reacted instantly, his hand darting inside his jacket for his firearm, stepping between Lucian and the perceived threat. But Lucian raised a single, gloved hand, stopping his enforcer dead in his tracks. Standing there was a little girl, no older than 7. She was shivering, swallowed up in a faded, oversized pink winter coat that looked like it had been pulled from a donation bin. Her blonde hair was matted with dampness and dirt, and a fading purple bruise marred her left cheekbone. But it was her eyes that made Lucian's breath hitch in his throat, piercing, icy blue eyes that stared up at him with a terrifying, hollow calm. Where did she come from? Colin hissed into his earpiece, scanning the rooftops and alley entrances. "Perimeter, report." "Never mind them," Lucian said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. He slowly crouched down, ignoring the expensive fabric of his trousers, soaking up the puddle beneath him. He was a man who had ordered the destruction of entire bloodlines without blinking. Yet looking at this child, a strange, uncharacteristic knot tightened in his chest. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" The little girl didn't blink. She pointed a trembling finger at the undercarriage of the idling SUV. "There's something under your car," she whispered. The silence that followed was absolute. In Lucian's world, a warning like that meant one thing: high-grade explosives. A targeted hit. "Boss, step back." "Now," Jared ordered, abandoning protocol and physically grabbing Lucian's shoulder to pull him away from the vehicle. Colin immediately signaled the trailing SUVs, instructing the men to form a shield wall. "Hold," Lucian commanded, shaking Jared off. He looked back at the girl. "Who sent you?" "The bad man," she murmured, clutching her own elbows. "He said if I didn't tell you, he would hurt my mommy again." Lucian's jaw tightened into a rigid line. He signaled Colin. "Get the mirror. Check the undercarriage. Do not touch anything." Colin, sweating despite the freezing temperature, retrieved an inspection mirror and a high-powered tactical flashlight from the trunk of the trailing car. He dropped to his knees, sliding the mirror beneath the heavy, reinforced chassis of the Mercedes. For 30 agonizing seconds, there was nothing but the sound of Colin's heavy breathing. "I see it," Colin finally said, his voice tight. "Driver's side, near the rear axle. It's magnetically attached to the frame. But boss, it doesn't look like an IED. There are no wires. No detonator. It's a box." Lucian didn't wait for the bomb squad. His intuition, honed by decades of surviving betrayals and assassination attempts, told him this was a message, not a bomb. He took the flashlight from Colin, dropped to the cold asphalt, and slid his broad shoulders under the SUV. Illuminated in the stark white beam of the flashlight was a matte black, military-grade Pelican case. It was secured to the metal with heavy-duty neodymium magnets. Lucian reached up, his leather gloves gripping the plastic handle, and yanked it free with a sharp tug. He slid out from under the car, placing the heavy box on the hood of the Mercedes. Jared and Colin stood back, hands hovering near their holsters. "Clear the street," Lucian ordered softly. "If this is a distraction for a sniper, I want every roof swept." Lucian popped the dual latches of the case. It hissed softly as the airtight seal was broken. Inside, resting on a bed of dark foam, were 3 items. 1. A cheap, disposable burner phone. 2. A blood-stained hospital admission bracelet. 3. A silver, heart-shaped locket. Lucian's heart stopped. The world around him, the wind, the sirens in the distance, the chatter of his men faded into an absolute, deafening vacuum. He reached out with a trembling hand and picked up the locket. It was tarnished, but he recognized the tiny, intricate engraving of a swallow in flight on the front. He didn't need to open it to know what was inside. He had paid a jeweler in Paris to custom make it 6 years ago. He dropped the locket and snatched the blood-stained hospital bracelet. The fluorescent streetlights illuminated the typed name on the plastic band. Beaumont, Claire. "No." Lucian breathed, the word barely escaping his lips. He spun around to face the little girl, who was now being shielded from the wind by Colin's massive frame. Lucian closed the distance between them in 2 long strides, dropping to his knees again. He grabbed the girl by the shoulders, perhaps a little too tightly, his icy blue eyes locking onto hers. "What is your name?" he demanded, his voice cracking with an emotion Jared and Colin had never heard from their boss. "Sophie," the girl squeaked, shrinking back slightly. Lucian stared at her face. He stripped away the dirt, the shadows, and the bruising in his mind's eye. He looked at the shape of her jaw, the bridge of her nose, and those eyes. God, those piercing, icy blue eyes. They were a mirror. They were his eyes. Sophie wasn't just a messenger. She was his daughter. 5 years ago, Lucian Blackwood was bleeding to death in the back room of an illegal underground clinic in the South End. A deal with a Colombian cartel had gone disastrously wrong, leaving him with 2 bullets in his abdomen. The mob doctor was out of town, and the only person available was a brilliant, fiery trauma nurse who had been moonlighting to pay off her brother's gambling debts. Her name was Claire Beaumont. She saved his life that night. In the weeks of recovery that followed, hidden away in a safe house, the ruthless crime lord and the civilian nurse fell deeply, recklessly in love. Claire was the only light in Lucian's violently dark world. She didn't care about his money or his power. She only cared about the man beneath the blood and the tailored suits. But the Mafia is a jealous mistress. When rival factions learned of Lucian's weakness, they put a bounty on Claire's head. To protect her, Lucian did the hardest thing he had ever done. He pushed her away. He staged a betrayal, making her believe he had been using her all along. He broke her heart so she would run, and she did. She vanished without a trace. Lucian never knew she was pregnant. Now, kneeling on the cold pavement, the crushing weight of 5 lost years crashed into him. Suddenly, the harsh electronic ringing of the burner phone shattered the silence. It echoed from the Pelican case resting on the hood of the car. Lucian stood up slowly. His face, moments ago twisted in anguish, now settled into a mask of pure, unadulterated murder. He walked to the car, picked up the cheap plastic phone, and pressed it to his ear. "Speak," Lucian said, his voice devoid of all human warmth. A dark, raspy chuckle came through the receiver. "Hello, Lucian. It's been a long time. I see you received my special delivery." Lucian recognized the voice instantly. Jasper Quinn. Jasper was a ghost. He was the former kingpin of the Irish syndicates in Boston, a vicious, sadistic man whom Lucian had systematically dismantled and driven out of the city 7 years ago. Jasper had supposedly fled to Europe, a broken man. Jasper, Lucian said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. You're a dead man breathing. Big words for a man whose heart I'm currently holding in my hands, Jasper taunted, the sound of a match striking echoing over the line. Did you like the little surprise? I have to say, finding Claire was a stroke of luck, but finding out that the great, untouchable Lucian Blackwood left behind a bastard child, that was the jackpot. If you touch a single hair on her head, save the tough guy routine, Jasper interrupted sharply. Here are the facts. I have Claire. She's currently chained to a radiator, and let me tell you, she is fighting like a wildcat, but she's losing blood, fast. If you want her to survive the night, you are going to sign over the deeds to the seaport logistics hubs, the offshore accounts in the Caymans, and you are going to walk away from Boston forever. Lucian's mind raced, calculating trajectories, odds, and logistics at lightning speed. You know how this works, Jasper. I need proof of life. There was a scuffle on the other end, the sound of a heavy blow, and then a ragged, breathless voice that made Lucian's heart physically ache. Lucian, don't give him anything. Claire gasped. Keep Sophie safe. Please. That's enough, Jasper barked, pulling the phone away. You have 3 hours, Lucian. I'll text you the coordinates for the meet. Come alone. If I see a single one of your goons, I will put a bullet in Claire's head and drop her in the harbor. And Lucian, don't think about crossing me. I have eyes on you right now. The line went dead. Lucian slowly lowered the phone. He turned to Jared and Colin. The professional, calculated syndicate boss was gone. In his place stood a monster off its leash. Take the girl. Put her in my armored car. Lucian ordered, his voice echoing in the alley. Call Dr. Evans. Have him waiting at the compound. She needs a full pediatric workup. Boss, what are we doing? Jared asked, eyeing the burner phone. We are going to war, Lucian stated flatly. He walked over to Sophie, who was now safely buckled into the back seat of the Mercedes, her small hands clutching a blanket Colin had found. Lucian leaned in, his expression softening just a fraction. Sophie, look at me. The little girl met his gaze. The bad man who took your mother. Did you see where you were? Were you in a house? A building? Sophie swallowed hard, trying to be brave. It was dark, and it was cold. It smelled funny. Funny how? Lucian prompted gently. Like garbage? Like chemicals? Like old fish, she said softly, and oil. And there was a really loud noise, like a big horn. It happened twice. Lucian's eyes widened. Old fish, oil, and a foghorn. The old Navy shipyard in Charlestown, Colin said from behind Lucian, putting the pieces together. Jasper's crew used to run contraband out of Pier 4 before we took it over. Half those warehouses are abandoned and structurally unsound. It's a perfect place to hide. Lucian nodded slowly. He looked back at Sophie. I'm going to bring your mother back to you. Do you understand me? I promise you. Sophie nodded, a single tear cutting a clean path through the dirt on her cheek. Lucian slammed the heavy door shut. The Tweldy Bay. He turned to his men. Mobilize everyone. I want 50 armed men locking down a 5-mile perimeter around the Charlestown shipyard. I want snipers on the Tobin Bridge. I want our maritime units patrolling the water blockades. No one gets in, and absolutely no one gets out. Jasper said to come alone. Boss, Jared warned. If he spots our guys, he won't spot them until it's too late, Lucian growled, pulling a sleek, customized Kimber 1000, 911, from his shoulder holster, and racking the slide. The metallic clack rang out like a death knell in the cold night air. Jasper Quinn thinks he's playing a game of chess. He thinks he's cornered the king by using the queen. Lucian looked out toward the dark horizon, his jaw set like granite. He's about to learn that I'm not playing a game. I'm going to burn the whole damn board down. The blacked-out motorcade cut through the dead of night like a phantom, bypassing the main arteries of Boston in favor of the industrial backroads. Lucian sat in the rear of the lead SUV, his hands resting on his knees, his breathing slow and measured. The chaotic storm of emotion that had engulfed him in the alley was gone, replaced by a terrifying, glacial calm. He was no longer just a man trying to save the woman he loved. He was a father securing his bloodline. At 1:15 a.m., the convoy killed its headlights 3 blocks from the Charlestown Naval Shipyard. The historic site, a labyrinth of decaying dry docks, rusted cranes, and cavernous warehouses, was cloaked in freezing maritime fog. The smell of salt, decaying kelp, and industrial oil hung heavy in the air, exactly as Sophie had described. "Com check," Colin whispered into his lapel mic, checking the tactical feed on a ruggedized tablet. "Alpha team in position on the north gantry." A static-laced voice replied, "Bravo team securing the southern exits. Waterborne unit holding position at the pier. Awaiting your signal. Boss." Lucian stepped out of the vehicle into the biting cold. He had shed his tailored suit jacket and overcoat, wearing only a black tactical vest over his dress shirt. He checked the magazine of his Kimber 1911, slapped it back into the grip, and chambered a round. "Jasper thinks I'm walking into his slaughterhouse alone," Lucian said quietly to Jared and Colin, who were both geared up in heavy body armor, holding suppressed submachine guns. "We give him exactly what he expects. I take the front door of Warehouse 4. You two take the catwalks. Stephen is running the jammer. Stephen is in the comms van," Jared confirmed. "He's broadcasting a localized electromagnetic field over the warehouse. Cell signals, radio frequencies, and remote detonators are dead in a 200-yard radius. Jasper's men can't call for backup, and if he's wired the place, he can't blow it remotely." "Good," Lucian murmured. "When the shooting starts, priority 1 is Claire. You do not engage Jasper unless he has a gun to her head. Jasper is mine." Lucian walked away from the safety of his men, his footsteps echoing softly against the cracked concrete. The fog swallowed him as he approached the rusted, corrugated steel doors of Warehouse 4. A single, flickering halogen bulb illuminated a side entrance. Standing beneath it were 2 men smoking cigarettes, armed with heavy shotguns. Lucian didn't break his stride. He emerged from the fog like a reaper, his weapon drawn. Before the first guard could even raise his shotgun, Lucian fired twice. The suppressed weapon issued 2 sharp thwips, and the guard crumpled, a red mist spraying the rusted siding. The second guard fumbled with his weapon, his eyes wide with panic, but Lucian was already on him. A swift, brutal strike with the steel barrel to the man's temple sent him collapsing to the ground, unconscious before he hit the dirt. Lucian stepped over the bodies and pushed the heavy iron door open. The interior of the warehouse was massive, smelling of mildew and old blood. Faint, yellow industrial lights cast long, skeletal shadows across the floor. In the center of the cavernous space, a makeshift arena had been cleared among the stacks of rotting wooden shipping crates. And there, sitting on a rusted oil drum like a king on a pitiful throne, was Jasper Quinn. Jasper hadn't aged well in exile. His face was scarred, his beard graying and unkempt, and his eyes burned with a feverish, manic intensity. Surrounding him were 6 heavily armed mercenaries, their weapons immediately tracking Lucian as he stepped into the light. But Lucian didn't look at Jasper or the guns. His eyes instantly locked onto the steel support pillar 10 yards behind them. Claire. She was bound to the pillar with heavy zip ties, her wrists raw and bleeding. Her face was bruised, her lip split, and her clothes were torn, but her chest was rising and falling. She was alive. When she heard Lucian's footsteps, she weakly lifted her head, despite the distance and the dim lighting. The moment their eyes met, the 5 years of agonizing separation vanished. "I'm here," his eyes promised her. "I've got you." "Well, well, well," Jasper's raspy voice echoed through the damp warehouse, accompanied by a slow, mocking clap. "The King of Boston graces us with his presence. And right on time. I have to admit, Lucian, I didn't think you'd actually come alone. I figured you'd try to bring an army." "I don't need an army for a dead man," Lucian said, his voice carrying clearly across the expanse. He stopped 20 paces away, keeping his hands visible but close to his weapon. "I'm here, Jasper." "Let her go." "Let her go?" Jasper laughed, a harsh, grating sound. He hopped off the oil drum and walked toward Claire, pulling a heavy hunting knife from his belt. He grabbed a handful of her dark hair, yanking her head back, and pressed the flat of the blade against her cheek. Claire let out a stifled gasp, but her eyes never left Lucian's. "You took everything from me, Lucian," Jasper snarled, his amusement vanishing. "My territory, my men, my legacy. You made me a rat, scavenging in the gutters of Europe. Did you really think I'd just let you hand over a few deeds and ride off into the sunset with your little family? I brought the transfer documents." Lucian lied smoothly, reaching slowly into his vest. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Jasper barked, gesturing with the knife. The mercenaries raised their rifles, lasers dancing across Lucian's chest. "I don't want your money anymore, Lucian. I realized on the boat ride over here, money won't fix what you broke. Only blood will." Jasper turned back to Claire, running the edge of the knife dangerously close to her throat. "I'm going to make you watch her bleed out. And then I'm going to track down that little brat you spawned, and I'm going to finish the job." Lucian's blood ran cold, but his face remained an impassive mask of stone. He tilted his head very slightly upward, staring into the dark rafters. "You talk too much, Jasper," Lucian whispered. Crack! The deafening report of a high-caliber sniper rifle shattered the heavy silence of the warehouse. The mercenary standing closest to Jasper's right side was violently thrown backward, his chest plate pulverized by an armor-piercing round. Before the echo could even fade, the skylights above shattered, raining shards of glass down upon the floor. "Now!" Lucian roared. Chaos erupted. From the catwalks above, Jared and Colin opened fire. Suppressed gunfire rained down, a precision ballet of death that immediately dropped 3 more of Jasper's men before they could even locate the source. Jasper, shrieking in rage and panic, shoved Claire aside and dove behind a stack of metal crates. "Kill him! Kill him!" he screamed to his remaining men. Lucian was already moving. He didn't dive for cover. He surged forward into the teeth of the gunfire. Adrenaline and pure, unadulterated rage fueled his movements. A mercenary stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, raising an assault rifle. Lucian didn't break stride. He raised the kimber, firing 3 rapid shots, center mass, head. The man dropped like a stone. Bullets chewed through the concrete around Lucian's feet and sparked off the metal crates. The air filled with the suffocating smell of cordite and pulverized dust. Above, the tactical team had breached the roof, dropping flashbangs into the far corners of the warehouse to disorient the remaining hostile forces. Lucian slid behind a rusted forklift, reloading his weapon with practiced, mechanical efficiency. He was 50 feet from Claire. A massive brute of a man, Kalen, Jasper's top enforcer, charged around the forklift, holding a pump-action shotgun. He was too close for Lucian to aim. Lucian dropped his shoulder and tackled the massive man at the knees. They hit the concrete hard. Kalen roared, swinging a fist the size of a ham, catching Lucian in the ribs with a sickening crunch. Lucian grunted. The wind knocked out of him, but he didn't stop. As Kalen scrambled to rack his shotgun, Lucian drew a specialized combat knife from his boot and drove it upward into the exposed gap under Kalen's body armor. The brute's eyes went wide, his grip on the shotgun loosening, and he slumped sideways. Gasping for breath, Lucian pulled himself up. The warehouse was turning into a graveyard. Jared and Colin had neutralized the perimeter guards and were methodically clearing the floor. Lucian, the scream tore through the gunfire. It was Claire. Lucian spun around. Jasper had crawled out from his cover and was desperately dragging Claire by her hair toward a heavy steel loading door at the back of the warehouse. He held a revolver, pressed firmly against her temple. "Hold your fire! Hold fire!" Lucian screamed into his comms. The shooting from the catwalk ceased instantly. Lucian stepped out into the open, his gun raised, aiming down the sights at Jasper's face. But the angle was terrible. Jasper was using Claire's body as a complete shield. "Drop it, Lucian. Drop the gun or I paint this floor with her brains." Jasper shrieked, his hands shaking violently. His eyes were wide with the realization that his grand revenge plot had utterly failed. He was a cornered rat. "Jasper, look around," Lucian said, his voice deathly calm, echoing in the sudden quiet of the warehouse. "Your men are dead. The building is surrounded. There is no boat coming for you. There is no escape. Let her go. And I'll make it quick. Harm her, and I will keep you alive for a month in a basement just to show you what pain really is. Back off," Jasper yelled, dragging Claire another 2 feet toward the door. "I'll kill her. I swear to God." Claire, tears streaming down her bruised face, locked eyes with Lucian. She wasn't looking at him with fear. She was looking at him with desperate love. She gave a microscopic, almost imperceptible nod. She remembered, 5 years ago, during his recovery in the safe house, Lucian had taught her basic self-defense. He had taught her exactly what to do if she was ever taken hostage from behind. Drop your dead weight. Drive your heel into their instep. Throw your head back. Claire acted. With a sudden, vicious surge of energy, she stomped her heavy boot down onto Jasper's foot with all her might. Simultaneously throwing her head backward into his nose, Jasper howled in pain, his grip loosening for a fraction of a second as blood spurted from his shattered nose. The revolver wavered away from Claire's head. It was all the window Lucian needed. He didn't hesitate. He squeezed the trigger twice. The heavy, .45 caliber rounds crossed the 50 feet in an instant. The first bullet took Jasper in the throat, cutting off his scream. The second caught him squarely between the eyes. Jasper Quinn's body snapped backward, hitting the steel door with a heavy thud before sliding lifelessly to the floor. Claire collapsed onto her knees, gasping for air, her hands still bound. Lucian sprinted across the warehouse, dropping his gun and sliding across the rough concrete to catch her. He pulled his combat knife and sliced the thick zip ties binding her wrists, throwing them aside. "Claire," he breathed, his voice cracking as he pulled her into his chest. "Claire, I've got you. You're safe." She buried her face in his neck, her hands gripping his tactical vest like it was a lifeline. She was shaking uncontrollably, sobbing, the adrenaline finally leaving her battered body. "You came," she whispered fiercely. "I knew you would come. I will always come for you." Lucian swore, burying his face in her dark hair, uncaring of the blood and dirt. He kissed the top of her head, holding her so tightly he was afraid she might vanish into the fog again. "I'm so sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry I made you leave. I thought I was protecting you." Claire pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. She reached up, her trembling, blood-stained fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Sophie," she choked out, panic suddenly returning to her eyes. "Where is she?" "Is she?" "She's safe," Lucian interrupted gently, catching her hand and kissing her palm. "She's safe, Claire. She's at my compound. She's the one who warned me. She saved my life." A fresh wave of tears spilled down Claire's cheeks, a mixture of profound relief and exhaustion. "She has your eyes, Lucian. Every time I look at her, I see you." "Boss," Jared's voice broke the intimate moment. He stepped out from the shadows, his weapon lowered, respectfully keeping his distance. The building is clear. Perimeter teams report no leakers. The local police scanners are going crazy. We have about 3 minutes before the sirens get here. Lucian nodded, not taking his eyes off Claire. He gently scooped her into his arms, lifting her battered frame effortlessly. She rested her head against his chest, finally surrendering to the safety of his embrace. "Burn the warehouse," Lucian ordered Jared without looking back. "Leave no trace of Jasper or his men. Let the city think it was an industrial accident." "Understood." Lucian carried the woman he loved out of the rusted tomb and into the cold night air. The fog was beginning to lift, revealing the first faint, grey hints of dawn on the horizon. The nightmare of the past 5 years was over. But as he carried Claire toward the waiting motorcade, Lucian knew the hardest part was just beginning. He had a family now. And in his world, a family was a liability. But looking down at Claire, and thinking of the little girl with his eyes waiting for them, Lucian Blackwood made a silent vow. He would tear down the very empire he had built if it meant keeping them safe. The heavy iron gates of the Blackwood estate in Weston, Massachusetts, groaned open as the armored motorcade rolled onto the sprawling, snow-dusted grounds. The sky above was bleeding from a bruised purple into a soft, fragile pink. Dawn had broken, taking with it the long, nightmarish shadows of the past 5 years. Lucian carried Claire directly into the estate's private medical wing, where Dr. Evans was waiting. The physician worked quickly and silently, cleaning Claire's wounds, administering IV fluids, and stitching the deep cut on her cheek. Lucian refused to leave the room. He sat in a high-backed leather chair in the corner, his blood-stained tactical vest discarded on the floor, watching her chest rise and fall with the steady rhythm of a monitor. After an hour, Dr. Evans packed his bag. "She's physically stable, Mr. Blackwood. Exhausted, malnourished and battered, but she will make a full recovery. The little girl is asleep in the guest suite, completely unharmed." Though she insisted on keeping her boots on, Lucian nodded, his voice thick with a profound exhaustion. "Thank you, Doctor. No one leaves the compound. Double the perimeter guard." As the heavy oak door clicked shut, Claire stirred. Her dark eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the soft, warm light of the bedside lamp. She turned her head, wincing slightly, and found Lucian watching her. The ruthless syndicate boss looked utterly undone, his hair disheveled, his face smeared with soot, and his icy eyes softened by an overwhelming, protective devotion. "Lucian?" she whispered, her voice raspy. He was at her side in a heartbeat, taking her bandaged hand in his massive, scarred ones. "I'm here. I'm right here. Sophie, I'll get her," he promised softly. He stepped out into the hallway and walked to the adjoining guest suite. He pushed the door open to find Sophie sitting bolt upright in the center of a massive king-sized bed, clutching a silk pillow like a shield. Her icy blue eyes, his eyes darted toward him. "Is my mummy okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. "She's okay," Lucian said, kneeling so he was eye level with his daughter. He had commanded thousands of men, orchestrated multi-million-dollar heists, and faced down cartels without a flinch. But speaking to this 7-year-old girl terrified him more than anything. "She wants to see you." Sophie didn't hesitate. She scrambled off the bed, her oversized boots thudding against the hardwood floor, and sprinted past him into the medical wing. Lucian followed, standing in the doorway as he watched the reunion. Sophie practically flew onto the hospital bed, burying her face in Claire's neck. Claire let out a choked sob, wrapping her arms fiercely around the little girl, kissing her hair, her cheeks, her forehead. "Mommy, I found him," Sophie cried, her tiny shoulders shaking. "I found the man like the bad guy said, and he came for us." "I know, baby, I know." Claire wept, her eyes finding Lucian over Sophie's shoulder. He kept us safe. Watching them, a seismic shift occurred within Lucian Blackwood. The violent empire he had built from the ground up, the smuggling routes, the underground casinos, the extortion rings suddenly looked like nothing but a pile of dirty, rusted iron. It was a world that had almost cost him the only two things that actually mattered. He could not be the king of the Boston underworld and a father at the same time. The two realities could not coexist without eventually destroying each other. Later that evening, after Claire and Sophie had fallen into a deep, peaceful sleep, Lucian summoned Jared, Colin, and Stephen to his study. The room was heavy with silence. Lucian stood by the crackling fireplace, pouring 3 fingers of scotch into a crystal glass. He turned to his most loyal men. "The war with Jasper is over," Lucian began, his tone carrying the absolute authority of a man who had just rewritten his own destiny. "But there is a bigger transition happening tonight." He walked over to his mahogany desk, opened the heavy floor safe, and pulled out 3 thick, black leather ledgers. These were the lifeblood of the Blackwood Syndicate, the records of every illegal transaction, every bribe, every dirty politician on their payroll. Lucian tossed the ledgers directly into the roaring fireplace. Jared took a step forward, his eyes widening as the flames licked the pages. "Boss, what are you doing?" "That's everything. That is the past," Lucian corrected flatly. "As of midnight tonight, the Blackwood Syndicate no longer deals in narcotics, illegal gambling, or blood money. We are taking the seaport logistics hubs, the offshore holdings, and the real estate development fronts, and we are going entirely legitimate." Colin stared at him in disbelief. "Legit? Boss? Half the families on the East Coast will think we've gone soft. They'll try to move on our territory within the week. Let them," Lucian said, his blue eyes hardening into diamonds. "If they step onto our docks, you handle them with extreme prejudice. But we are done instigating. We are done living in the shadows. I am turning this enterprise into a legitimate corporate titan. And anyone in our ranks who wants to keep playing gangster can walk away tonight with a severance package. If they stay, they play by my new rules." He looked at Jared. Then Colin. "I need men I can trust to run the security divisions of a billion-dollar shipping company. Are you in, or are you out?" Jared looked at the burning ledgers, then at Lucian. He had seen the way his boss had looked at Claire and the little girl. He understood. "I'm in, boss," Jared said firmly. "Me too," Colin agreed. "Good," Lucian said, raising his glass. "Then let's get to work. We have a lot of ghosts to bury." 6 months later, the July sun beat down warmly on the private beach behind the Blackwood estate. Lucian stood barefoot in the sand, wearing linen trousers and a simple white shirt. His sleeves rolled up to reveal his scarred forearms. He wasn't wearing a gun. For the first time in 2 decades, he didn't feel the need to. Down by the water's edge, Claire was laughing, the sound ringing out like music over the crashing waves. She was helping Sophie build an elaborate sandcastle, complete with a moat they were trying to fill with seawater. The bruise on Claire's cheek had long since faded, replaced by a radiant, healthy glow. Sophie suddenly dropped her plastic bucket and sprinted up the beach toward Lucian, her blonde hair flying behind her. "Daddy!" she yelled, crashing into his legs and wrapping her arms around his waist. "Come help us! The water keeps breaking the walls!" Lucian smiled a genuine warm smile that reached all the way to his icy blue eyes. He scooped his daughter up, lifting her high into the air as she shrieked with delight before resting her securely on his hip. "Well, we can't have that," Lucian said, pressing a kiss to her cheek. He looked down at the beach, his eyes meeting Claire's. She was smiling at him, a look of profound, unwavering love in her eyes. "Let's go build a wall that nothing can knock down." He walked down to the water, leaving his heavy footsteps in the sand, a man who had finally found something worth fighting for and a life worth living. Did this intense story of love, betrayal, and redemption keep you on the edge of your seat. If you loved Lucian and Claire's epic journey from the shadows into the light, hit that like button and share this video with your fellow romance and drama fans. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you never miss another thrilling, real-life inspired story.